Hi, everyone. So my name is Constanza Zafatle. I am the new Executive Director at TaskforceNL. Thank you for being here today and take 1 hour of your day to engage in a forum where we will learn and talk about immigration and opportunities for Ukrainians to find a job and start a new safe life here in Newfoundland. Before anything else, on behalf of TaskforceNL, I would like to take a moment to know and acknowledge the lands throughout that province, that the province on which we gather, live, and work are the homelands of the Inuit, Innu, Mi'kmaq, and Beothuk, and recognize their ancestral and continuous ties to these lands and waters. I want to share that before to be an executive director of TaskforceNL, I am still an immigrant woman and with temporary worker visa, and see this massive group of employers willing to learn, to start, or increase the diversity in their company, hiring Ukrainians and immigrants, made me think that soon we will change the fact the Newfoundland and Labrador is the province in Canada with lower rates of retention. I want to share that it is a shame that today some of businesses in our community are shutting down or curbing hours when so many Ukrainians are looking for work in our province. So let's take action and change the future of our community. A little bit of housekeeping. As you can see, this meeting is recording. And let's keep the question, please, until the end. So Courtney from TaskforceNL will be coordinate and moderate that piece. Try to take your camera on. We love to see faces and expressions too. So we encourage you. Imad, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us. We'll get a presentation up here in your window. Can we get the PowerPoint in the box, please? And I just wanted to tell you that we had 153 people register. The vast majority are employers, and we're very, very thrilled about that. I actually was in touch with the Premier's office as he was hoping to drop in and have a surprise thank you message for considering hiring Ukrainians. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it, but as you know, this issue is near and dear to his heart, and obviously all of our hearts. So just wanted to say thank you for showing up. So wanted to provide a little bit of context on there we go. I'm getting my PowerPoints up, so everyone hopefully see my screen. Next slide, please. Not able to. Okay, perfect. So today what we're going to cover, obviously we've had our welcome. We wanted to talk about the critical role that employers will play, and I'm a board member of TaskforceNL, so I'll take you through a little bit of background. We're going to learn about the visa program from our friends from the province. We're going to get an employer perspective from someone who just hired a Ukrainian from Sino, and we're going to hear from ANC about settlement services that are available to workers, and hopefully we'll be done on time with a few next steps and questions and answers. Next, please. So first of all, who is TaskforceNL? Well, we are a not-for-profit social enterprise. We action big ideas. That's what I was drawn to when I joined the board a few months ago. Big ideas and mobilized to solve big problems. So of course, that's exciting for anyone to hear. And the truth is the organization was born in a time of crisis. At the beginning of COVID, it was formed to solve the PPE crisis, where we couldn't get gloves and all kinds of safety equipment, and was very successful in doing that. The organization has a broad reach within the business community across all sectors and all regions. It's got a great board of directors, and I'm very honored to be able to join them, and very diverse backgrounds from business, academia, and industry. And right now, for the foreseeable future, because this is a huge issue, we're singularly focused on accelerating immigration in the province. Next, please. So next. So the population, I won't get into too much of this, but just to frame the context that we meet under, the population of the province is expected to decline by 10% by 2036. So we're going to end up with a smaller, much older overall population. And of course, that's catastrophic to the viability and vitality of the province. There are no longer enough high school kids graduating to fill job vacancies in the economy. The labor and skills shortages are already being felt in the form of business closures as Constanza mentioned, and shortened business hours and so on. The people that are coming back are coming here to retire, not to work. So the rest of the country has the same kind of issues with birth rates, but they're fixing it with immigration. It's actually 75% of the growth in the population is due to immigration. So we need to actually exceed the average, but we're still playing catch-up mode. Next. So you've heard Bill Clinton say, you know, it's the economy, stupid. And I guess I would just say next, I would say that, you know, right now, if he was still running for something, he'd be saying it's immigration, stupid. This is the issue of our times for our province. And it's a silent sort of creeping crisis that's been creeping for a while now. And I think, next, please. I think we're going to start seeing, you know, the early warning signs. And I've just been paying attention in the last week or so of how many articles there have been on the skills shortage and businesses shutting down. So I think the early warning system has been activated. I think we're seeing it, and unfortunately, we're going to see a lot more of it. And that's why TaskforceNL believes that this is a crisis worthy of all of our attention and efforts, as bigger than COVID. I mean, hopefully COVID will go away at some point, but this issue is just going to get bigger unless we tackle it as a community and as a province. Next. So I won't get into this, but you know, the 5 areas that we want to focus on employers, because employers are the group that makes the difference. Without jobs, no one comes. And it's not just jobs for the people we hire, it's jobs for their families. So no one comes and no one stays. And so we're looking at helping employers with advocacy, if there are things that need to be changed in government policy or resources that are put forward, educating employers, which this forum is obviously part of, helping with best practices, like how do you do international recruitment? How do you keep people? What are some of the things that are successful for employers? If there are any programs to be delivered to employers, we're certainly happy to look at that. And we also want to help build employer communities, because I think this is a journey, and this is a journey that we think, you know, a lot of it is confidence, and this is new for some people. And the more that we're doing it together in unison, the more comfortable and strong and more effective. So we're going to try to bring a community of employers that are interested in this issue together. Next, please. And of course, this session is about Ukraine. And I would say to you, if not now, if not Ukrainians, then when and for who? Because, you know, we're all crushed, I guess, by the weight of the images and the sad news that we're seeing from Ukraine. The country and the province has made it very easy for immigrants to come from Ukraine. They can come here for 3 years, which you'll hear about shortly. It's very easy. Employers have nothing to do or very little to do with that process. So if we can't do it now and people really want to help, you know, when is the better time? I don't think there is a better time to jump and rise to the occasion. So some Ukrainians will want to settle here permanently. Some will want to stay here for a few years. Our challenge is to act quickly, collaboratively, and compassionately. So this forum, this web forum, is a first step. So I just wanted to assure you that our plans as TaskforceNL is not to end here. Our goal is to bring together all of the employers, along with some of the stakeholders in government, industry, businesses, and so on, and communities, to really work on this continuously until we're one of the most successful jurisdictions in the world for helping Ukrainians, and certainly certainly in North America, I should say, for bringing in Ukrainians and helping them settle, and also for immigration. Like, we really want to up our game as a province. We have no choice. So we want to go through this journey together with you. Next, please. So this forum is obviously focused on Ukrainians, and the need is overwhelming. And I just wanted, from a personal perspective, Blue Drop has had a team in Ukraine working in Lviv, mainly Lviv, some in the capital as well, for about 4 or 5 years now. And we have 6 people there now, programmers. We've had probably a dozen different people. I just wanted to vouch for them, first of all. They are fantastic. They're some of the best people we've ever worked with. We consider ourselves very privileged to have found them. They've made a huge difference to our growth as a company. And They're just wonderful people, very conscientious, hardworking. I can't say enough good about them. And one of them has connected me to a friend of his who was a former swimming instructor. Of course, he's out of work now in Lviv. And I just want to share with you some pictures that he sent, because, next, please. So this is, just to put it in context, this is what the lucky people who got out of some of the war-torn areas are living with. These are accommodations for some of the people fleeing into Lviv. Obviously, at some point, there is some housing, but a lot of it is this kind of situation. I won't share with you some of the more emotional pictures, but it's a very hard time, and it just puts it into context. And I think the number one thing that they need is a job. And so we're so thrilled that we have all of these employers that are interested in learning more. So without further ado, next, please. I wanted to turn it over to Katie Norman and Maggie Payton from the province, and they're going to tell you a little bit about the visa program and give you an overview. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much, Imad, for that excellent overview and warm welcome. And I want to throw a bouquet to our colleagues at TaskforceNL. In the early days, when we were trying to figure out how we could best respond to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we knew we needed some assistance in terms of engaging employers. And today, I think, provides that excellent opportunity where we've been able to work with your organization to bring together individuals representing a wide range of organizations and regions in the province. And so that's the strength of collaboration, which I think is the benefit of today. I'm here with my colleague, Maggie Payton. My name is Katie Norman. I'm the Assistant Deputy Minister of Immigration and Population Growth for the province. And Maggie is the Manager for Settlement, Integration, International Student Engagement, who's been overseeing the team that's been located in Warsaw, Poland for the last going on 7 weeks now. Okay, so we want to welcome Ukrainians to Newfoundland and Labrador. And I really was deliberate in choosing that phrase because this is something we do a lot of work, and with many of you, we may have engaged with you in the past on immigration where we've got a specific job and we're looking for the talent that we need. And in this place and this way, the initiative is flipped in some regards. We have individuals we want to support and we want to best find the most meaningful employment and the best use of their skills. So it's really about matching the individual to the employer, which means we need a good inventory of opportunities for individuals. There are absolutely other initiatives where we can directly target you to fill specific positions. But this in some ways is flipped around, and it's really about making sure that Ukrainians have that smooth pathway to Newfoundland and Labrador. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the mechanism for people to enter Canada, because that's really important. Many of you may be familiar with Provincial Nominee Program, Federal Express Entry, Atlantic Immigration Program, Temporary Foreign Worker Program, but this is a separate initiative and has some certain flexibilities around it that may be appealing to you as an employer community. And then we'd also like to talk about what we're doing under the Provincial Ukrainian Family Support Desk in terms of job matching and how, if you're inspired by this, how you can get involved more. So back in March, the Government of Canada announced the Canada-Ukraine Authorization for Emergency Travel. QIT is one of the ways that it's pronounced, that acronym. And it offers Ukrainians and their family members a free extended temporary status that allows them to work, study, and stay in Canada for up to 3 years. And what's unique about this is people are entering as temporary residents for 3 years with an open work permit, which actually enables them to work for any Newfoundland and Labrador employer. Some of you who've engaged with immigration in the past may be aware that jobs have to be full-time, they have to be year-round, they have to be permanent job offerings. Individuals don't have those requirements, and they can accept jobs related to their skills, complementary to their skills, or any position really that they want to avail of. So it gives them a level of flexibility in terms of where they work, which is positive. And it also means from an employer perspective, once somebody enters, there's no real paperwork for you to have to do to support them and onboarding them to your company or your organization. The federal government has set a service standard. So what's happening right now, in the early days, people were actually getting a FOIL visa in their passport. They're now receiving electronic visa. So that's sped up the process. And they are, for non-complex standard cases, we're generally seeing a 14-day service standard of a complete application. There are some complexities. People are for a large part Ukrainian, so Ukrainian first and last names. There can be some complexity around the spelling of names and translation. So, and that's a relatively simple thing to get straightened out, but we are seeing some of those issues. But just to say that this is the fastest way that you can bring in foreign talent. There's nothing really that rivals this unless you're talking extremely high skilled individuals, maybe coming from the United States or something like that. Individuals who enter, Ukrainians who come to Canada, may choose to permanently immigrate after their arrival through a variety of pathways. And from the provincial perspective, we are going to be working actively with any individuals who come and want to remain in Canada to either remain here permanently through the provincial nominee program or the Atlantic immigration program. So providing priority spaces for them under that over the next 3 years. And we are actively aware of people who are thinking long-term already. So we have had some conversations with people who do have intent to reside, because I'm thinking from an employer perspective, you may be interested in what those options are and whether people have an intention to remain. To give you a sense of volume of how many people are we talking about? The government of Canada has received over 180,000 applications for these visas, and just over 71,000 have been approved. They're valid for 10 years, so you're able to come for 3 years once you enter. But there are people who are absolutely availing of this who may in the future want to come to Canada, but maybe are not making travel plans right away. So we are seeing that. So just to give you a sense of the order of magnitude, this is a very significant number of people potentially who could be entering Canada under this authorization. Next slide, please. So on March 2nd, the government of Newfoundland and Labrador was the first province to launch a dedicated service portal, which we're calling the Ukrainian Family Support Desk, assisting individuals in the province, like members of the Ukrainian community, with family reunification through referrals to federal pathways, directing Ukrainians who wish to work in the province to employment opportunities, and connecting with employers who wish to offer employment opportunities to Ukrainians. And we've been building that inventory ever since that time. About 2 weeks later, we established a physical presence in Warsaw, where we have been located, again, only Canadian province with an open, I guess really Canadian jurisdiction, with a front-facing service desk in the region. So we've been there since mid-March. We're going on week 7. So we've interacted with thousands of people, but more than 400 are formally registered with us for job matching, which means they've come, they've said, yeah, I'm interested in working in Newfoundland, Labrador. They've sent a resume, or they're in the process of sending a resume to us. And to give you a sense, it's not as simple as someone just emails us and we flick it to you. We are actively working with the individual to talk about their credentials, get a sense of their experience, assist with translation, assist with formatting. Resumes can be done in very different formats depending on sort of the cultural differences across countries. So we are supporting that process as well and having virtual meetings with our team. So that's largely a group of people who are physically here in St. John's doing that work. And the initial referral to the desk is happening on the ground in Warsaw. We've had more than 2,000 jobs posted to the desk across all sectors and regions. So many employers are actively engaged. And in order to do that, we're seeking just details on what the job is. So if you have a recent job ad, short position description, location of the position, and then as we receive people who meet those needs, we're sending resumes. And we are actively involved, like I said, in the resume component, but we're also supporting in terms of interview scheduling, follow-up, and details on that. Next slide, please. So to support this, in addition, last week we launched an online service registration form. So you'll hear more from the Association for New Canadians in a moment, but we are attempting to capture anybody who's entering the province from a service perspective so that we can connect them to education, we can connect them with volunteer supports that they may need, housing. If they don't have a job, this is another way that we're going to find out about those individuals. And so, as you can appreciate, with a sort of standard refugee resettlement, which this is not, like, for example, some of you may be familiar that there were individuals from Afghanistan, right, who came to Newfoundland and Labrador last fall. And so with those group of people, they came on one flight. The government of Canada was actively involved in that. With Ukraine, people can make their own travel arrangements at any time. So there are people who have already arrived on their own. They booked their arrangements. They've traveled here commercially. And in that case, we want to just ensure that people have access to our desk. And so there is a service registration form online at our website. And when we become aware of people prior to arriving in the province, we are making referrals to Association for New Canadians, who is supporting through housing search assistance, language training, and pre-arrival support. So they're actually talking to individuals about life in Newfoundland and Labrador before they physically get on a plane and come here. So we're trying to do that. And I offer that context really for employers to give you a sense of what supports are going to be provided to individuals. We're providing, I think, a fairly robust wraparound of supports, including, provincial medical care plan, insurance and prescription drug program. Coverage has been granted to all individuals who enter Canada under an emergency authorization. So that's really the bulk of what we're doing. And I'm conscious we only have an hour and wanted to leave time for questions or discussion as needed. But that's the tops of the trees of what the province's desk is offering.
Thank you very much, Katie. And I just wanted to commend the province on their leadership. I mean, normally, we push all levels of government to take action and, rise to the occasion. And this is probably the only time in my life that I felt that I'm rushing to catch up to government. So I just wanted to say, good for you. You went there with a lot of questions that were unanswered. And I think we're all the better for it. And more importantly, this is so wonderful for the Ukrainian people. So our next, next please, next slide. So now we have an employer that's just gone through this process that Katie and Maggie were outlining. We have Joni Barber from Sino. If we can turn on her. Joni, are you there? And she'll just tell you their experiences. Thank you.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. So I guess I'm here as an employer representative to ease any hesitancy or anything regarding hiring internationally, specifically Ukrainians at this point. This is not new to us. The decision to hire a Ukrainian was an easy one for us as a company. It's always what we've done. We've always had a remote culture and a remote hiring culture, even if the employees are local. So and also we've also gone through the Atlantic Immigration Program twice before with successful results and having 2 of our employees gain their permanent residency. We're also in the process of waiting on a work permit approval for another employee coming from Algeria. That is actually how I got in contact with Christina at the immigration department. And we were talking about another employee, and she mentioned that she had a resume come through her desk with, it was a software developer, and we are looking for them because in the tech industry, they are hard to find. And so hiring internationally we've basically been, it's been a necessity for us. So we're pretty excited about that. So yeah, so we've had 2 of those and another. And so anyway, so we were excited. So she sent the resume across. We were in touch with him a couple days later, put him through our interview process, which for us makes a huge difference in how we hire, because everyone that we hire are remote. They may not be, even if they're here locally. So one of the big things for us, for those who may be uncomfortable or hesitant with like the newness factor of hiring internationally, we have a process whereby we engage our current employees to do peer-to-peer interviews to help with like understanding what our company culture is and if they fit and all these things. Obviously, we go through the process of background checks and we would do that with anyone, regardless of where they're from. So for us as a company, we have had success, whether we're hiring locally here in Newfoundland or anywhere in the world. And so we're trying to get here to become full-time employees, and we're super excited about that. So for us, our new employee arrives here on Monday with his family. They're super excited and nervous. We're super excited as well, and we've been engaging with them to see how best to assist them in coming. So thankfully, they're a part of the charter flight that's coming in on Monday, as well as the 2 weeks hotel accommodations. So right now we're working through the details of future accommodations, obviously, and any of the necessities that they would need. For example, I'm looking for a pack and play for their 1-year-old. Some basic things like that we're trying to do, that we're also offering financial assistance to help with the relocation costs, because they're literally coming with the basics. So we're super excited about that. And we've had nothing but positive experiences working with the immigration department. Shout out to Christina and Sarah specifically, who's been helping us with this process. From an immigration process perspective, hiring a Ukrainian is by far the easiest process we have ever gone through. They literally come in on a flight and they can start work whenever they get here. Obviously, we'll give them a little time to settle in, but it's super easy. There's no paperwork, there's no nothing. So that was super exciting. We were willing to do it anyways, but the ease of process has made this all the more better. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I kind of wanted to say. I will be a part of the Ukrainian Employer Roundtable. If anyone wanted to email me directly, they can just go to the sino.ca website and I'm there. You can contact me there. But yeah, I'm just happy to kind of be a part of this and endorse this immigration process. And so if there's any way that I can help any of you employers, I'm still working through details ourselves regarding this specific process, but together I think we can get through it, and I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing that's getting done.
Thank you, Joni. Can I ask you one quick question?
Sure.
First of all, thank you for agreeing to join the Ukrainian Employer Roundtable to help share, because that's the idea of it. So I really appreciate that. But my question is, how much more difficult was this experience versus hiring someone from Edmonton, say?
It was no different for us.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, he had to wait for a visa, but once the visa and then book a flight. So it's literally, he went through the exact same process as what we would go through any of our employees. So yeah, it was pretty straightforward. So yeah. Excellent.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. All right, so our next speaker, and I don't know if we have slides, but it's Monica from the ANC, the Association for New Canadians, of course, which many of us are familiar with. And she's going to take us through some of the support services that they're going to be providing for some of the new people that come. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So thank you very much. And thank you to Courtney for quickly grabbing my slides from a last minute email. Very much appreciated. And I should start by mentioning that on the call with us today are two of my very dear colleagues. Eileen Kelly-Freak is our Director of Employment and Career Services at the Association for New Canadians. And Sherry Abbott is one of our wonderful managers also in the employment team. So we have lots of really incredible people here who can answer your questions. And if time does not allow, we will definitely also share our contact at the end of this presentation. Next slide. Yeah, so we can go to the next slide after this. You know who we are. Association of New Canadians is a nonprofit organization that's community-based here in Newfoundland and Labrador. And we cover quite a large array of services, the whole basket really of services that are provided to newcomers of various statuses that are arriving in the province, including resettlement, settlement, language, and employment. And I'm going to unpack what those mean for Ukrainian folks in a minute. Next slide, please. And so our work we've got quite a history in this province, over 40 years of experience working with resettled refugees and newcomers. And we work with over 150 employers and more than 500 volunteers at this point. And most importantly for this conversation, wanted to point your attention to the fact that we have satellite offices. So we have 7 offices at the moment across all of Newfoundland and Labrador. They are in Corner Brook, Grand Falls, Windsor, Labrador West, Fort Towe, Happy Valley, Goose Bay, Clarenville, and St. Anthony. Most of those teams are also mobile, so we serve neighboring communities to those as well where they exist. And we're one of 44 organizations across Canada that delivered the Resettlement Assistance Program. That program is provided to government-assisted refugees, which these folks are not. And we can speak, I saw a question come up about that, and I can speak to that in a minute. What importantly, the Ukrainian families that we've been meeting with and are fleeing a war situation, an invasion. So while they aren't qualified for the government refugee resettlement program, they do have a lot of similar needs. And so we have been really lucky to work closely with our colleagues at the Office of Immigration and Multiculturalism so that we can actually address those needs in an equally as robust way. Next slide, please. So I won't go into this, but I know that you'll get a copy eventually of our slides so that you have this in your pocket. This is an overview of all the programs that we currently offer in-house. I thought it was a useful reference point for you should you need to reference that after, but I will get into the basket of services in a moment that we're delivering specifically to the Ukrainian folks. Next slide, please. So for the services for the Ukrainians, as we kind of already know, the invasion started in February 2022. And as we've alluded to already, I at least I'm definitely very proud to be a Newfoundlander because the Newfoundland government is the only government to set up an office and mission to Poland and have really kind of set the tone and really provided leadership for everybody in the country on what is possible. In March, also, IRCC announced the special authorization for emergency travel visa, and we were then contracted at the end of the month to deliver the settlement services, and in last month opened our own Ukraine support team. To maybe speak to that question about why the Canadian-Ukraine authorization for emergency travel visa and not a refugee support program. It is really couched in international law. And so international law gives the Federal Department of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada the guidance on how to kind of approach this issue. And typically there are several parts of international law, the Refugee Convention, that guide that political decision. The first is that the refugee that has left Ukraine, so once you cross an international border, you are qualified for refugee status, but to actually become a refugee under international law, you have to apply for refugee status determination. So there are times where there are large movements of people. Another great example that we can, recently recollect is the Syrian movement. And when people initially flee in large groups out of, for example, Syria or Ukraine, at first they're extended de facto temporary refugee status. That allows them to access the immediate neighboring country in a way that they won't then be deported involuntarily. That's the language in the law. So it has, the only way they can be sent home if they have de facto temporary refugee status is if it is by choice, a voluntary repatriation. So that gives them immediate protection. But under the United Nations, what they do is they actually wait to see what the conflict will happen in the conflict. So to give you a really poignant example, I was working in Cairo, Egypt, when the Libyan war started. In the beginning, they were all temporary refugees. But because the violence ended in Libya within a few months, the temporary status went away and they had to apply for immigration to Egypt if they wanted to stay in the country. And most people chose to go home. So that is really similar to what is going on right now with the Ukraine situation. Eventually, and there are some guidelines for when, the UN will then reevaluate the situation and make refugee status determination, which happens at an individual level. You can be from Switzerland and apply for refugee status determination if you can prove you're persecuted. And so they then open that up to Ukrainians. So it's too soon in the conflict for us to be able to avail ourselves of refugee resettlement. And then the second piece of international law that's relevant here, or refugee convention that's relevant, is the fact that they are fleeing to what is considered a safe country, other parts of Europe. And we don't resettle refugees from Europe. So we couldn't use our Canadian resettlement program for that reason. So they need to find other ways to actually get access. So the Canadian government quite quickly created this emergency authorization for travel with a 3-year open work permit, which then again would allow either the situation to resolve itself, or if it doesn't, then we can make a refugee status available to this group. So that's like a quick and dirty, and I can get into that more in another session because of the time today. So I'm going to jump into my services. So Courtney, if you could change the next slide. You can keep going. We don't need to get into this today, but this is kind of an overview, quick and dirty, of what ANC is up to. So pre-arrival, we have the benefit of working closely with our colleagues at the Office of Immigration and Multiculturalism to meet with families, to do case management, and help answer all of their questions about life in Newfoundland. When they arrive on a case-by-case basis, so for this charter, for example, or as individuals enter, if they have needs for assistance with temporary accommodation, we are making those supports available to them for 2 weeks to a month, depending on their individual needs. Or for example, if they don't have a place to self-isolate and they need to do that, we have temporary accommodations to be able to support them. We then support them with all of the basket of resettlement services, and importantly, they're qualified for all federal and provincial funded settlement services. And if we go to the next slide, I'll show you what those means specifically for Ukrainians. Next slide, please. So with the Ukrainian file, and that slide needs to be adjusted before we send it out, but with the Ukrainian file, we are specifically, I mentioned temporary housing, but we're also helping link people with both community offers and with rental accommodations, depending on their unique needs. So we have an incredible outpouring of support from Newfoundlanders with offers of free housing. So we are vetting those and getting the required police record checks so that we can link families with those free offers, but we're also helping those who are gainfully employed find affordable housing in any of the communities which they then choose to resettle. We're helping with case management, referral, and settlement planning. And these are really unique to each individual. So it can be based on their unique mental health needs or their unique interest for recreational programs. And we help them come up with that settlement plan. We are linking them with all the required government documents, which Katie spoke to already. They are eligible for all of our language instruction programs, both in the workplace, in class, or online. And we're helping them with connecting to their local community through our volunteer programs, as well as by developing some unique community programs to provide support in the community. Next slide, please. Oh, this slide did not migrate well. So I'll speak to it and then we'll have that fixed for you folks. But for employment, let me just open my version, sorry. For employment services, at ANC, we offer employment counseling, which includes kind of assessing their needs, helping them develop their resume, facilitating credential recognition and licensure and certification, and helping them get ready for that first job, which includes everything from, one-on-one interview coaching to targeted workshops or assistance with budgeting and workplace communication. And then we also have a really robust set of services around job matching and onboarding. So while OIM is helping significantly with this, there will be some folks who might need some additional support. And really importantly, I think one of the really beautiful things that our employment service offers is a really wraparound program for the employee to help them maintain their job. There's lots of challenges that a new refugee will face. And if you can just imagine, for a Ukrainian family, finding out bad news from home might be one of those reasons. So our team, both with our social workers and our employment staff, really work to provide that wraparound to ensure that people are ready or are able to maintain the job that you have so kindly offered. Next slide, please. So last but not least, and my contact is below, so when you get a copy of this slide, we'll be sure to correct the dimensions so that you can see them, but we will leave you with all of our contacts. We have equally a Ukraine support team, including folks who speak the language, available at the ready for you folks. And then our Director of Employment, Eileen, who's on the call today, and myself, Monica, as a Director of Settlement, we are here to support you. And we cannot thank TaskforceNL enough for gathering such an incredible group of employers who are keenly ready to provide support. And as Katie said, we are working not just with Ukrainians, we have refugees and immigrants in our services from around the world who I know are just as excited to be able to link to you for their first jobs in Canada. So thank you so much, and I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much, Monica. And, I would say, don't worry about your slides. I mean, the funny thing about this is we only put out this notice on Friday. So it's just totally remarkable and heartwarming to see so much interest. And I think the key message is that there's a lot of support. So we appreciate what ANC brings to the table, obviously the province, and TaskforceNL wants to be there because we see it as a journey to kind of get closer and closer to bringing to making that decision and bringing some people here, or helping the people that have come to get jobs. Thank you. So my last slide is, and we can get into some questions. So what are some of the next steps? Well, obviously, we would like you to register with the province. They've done a lot of work. They've gone out there on a limb to figure out a lot of this, and they're the only province, as Monica said, that's doing that, which is remarkable. And I think they can help with the matching. There's some questions around that I'll get into. We would like to ask everyone to consider joining our Ukrainian Employer Roundtable. That's a group that'll meet every couple of weeks. You don't have to show up. We don't take attendance. There's no commitment. But if you're trying to move forward in that journey, we know that there are questions that will arise, and I think some of those questions are best answered by officials and by knowledge, and some of them are just best answered by the employer down the road, or someone in a similar industry, or someone with a similar challenge. So we're going to set that up. You'll see there's a quick survey, taskforcenl.com/first-step. If you can go there, please, and download that. We'd really love to get your feedback, and that's where you can sign up for the Employer Roundtable. And finally, I would say I would really like you to, obviously that's what we're all doing here, to seriously consider hiring Ukrainians. I think there's 11 million people displaced in that country. Half of the school kids have been taken out of school, and they're the lucky ones, and have ended up in other places within the country and outside the country. So there's a lot of strain on the people and the communities that are hosting them. And obviously the real strain is with the people that have had to flee. Again, getting back to the focus of TaskforceNL on helping employers to move up the food chain in terms of hiring internationals, and to make it a normal thing. I mean, I would like to think that in 3 years' time, no matter where you are in the province, that's a very normal experience. And I think that that's a journey, like I said, that we'll go on together. So certainly Ukrainians are coming anyway, but they're not coming without, you know, they need a job, and they need a job to support themselves, and they also need a job to send money back home. And the irony is we have a lot of jobs that are unfilled. I've read at least 3 articles about businesses shutting down because they can't find labor. And that's just a shame when you have all these people that are so eager to come here. So it feels like a risk. I would leave you with one context, which is, you know, imagine, and it does feel risky and it does feel like a new thing, but that's nothing compared to the risk of, you know, leaving everything you own, your family behind in the middle of the night and going to a new place where you don't know what your future holds. So risk is always relative. Next, please. But the rewards are not relative. And this is a group that I found on Facebook a few days ago. It's actually almost up to 2,000 people, a combination of Ukrainians and local residents, all mixing together, people posting, looking for help to come to Newfoundland, looking for jobs, people from here offering beds and accommodations. And that's part of the fabric of working together. And this is when I say, you know, risk is relative, but the rewards are not. When you think of, this is a little girl that just came here on Friday. And that was posted in the group. Somebody donated a bed, and you know, they donated everything, and they're here now. So that's very heartwarming. And I just wanted to put it in context, what we're all trying to do together. So thank you very much for attending, and especially on short notice. This is our awesome team who put this together in 4 days or 5 days. And I just want to say thank you. Any of them, if you want to reach out to any of them, please do. And you're going to hear a lot more from us on this issue. So all that said, I know we had a few questions in the chat. I think a lot of them were answered, but I'm certainly happy to, and if anybody wanted to put up their hand, we have about 13 minutes left. So we didn't address the issue of, you know, why their status is not there. You know, short answer is it's very painful to get the status. It takes 10 years sometimes. So this is extraordinary levels of agility and speed on behalf of both sets of governments. So that's, now there's a question here about background checks and fingerprinting. And so I don't know, Katie, if you saw that one or you've already answered it.
Yeah, so couple things on the background checks piece. So anybody getting a QED receives biometrics. So there's fingerprinting done, and there's a level of analysis done on the person's criminal background prior to entering Canada. If you do want to seek a further criminal record check when someone comes here, the RCMP can support you with that as well. There may be logistical issues depending on where the person was residing in Ukraine, but there are large portions of Ukrainian government still operating as best they can. So it's not impossible. But you do have the I guess, comfort that there has been the biometrics completed by the government of Canada prior to approval enter. The other thing I'll just note in terms of timeliness, because I think Jody mentioned this from Sino, and Minister Byrne has spoken about this publicly, we do have a charter of Ukrainian individuals coming to our province in the next week. And so some of them have accepted jobs, a number of them. Others are going through the job process in terms of making, going to interviews, receiving offers, determining which offer they want to take. But there are people who will be here and on the ground. And so some of you, the earlier you can, I guess, express interest, even if you don't have the job ad, even if you just want to write and say, look, if you have people with these skills who are interested, there may be people that within the next, and many people are already double vaccinated, so they'll be able to actually, in theory, start work as early as, you know, next week or the week after. That's probably being ambitious. People have things to get sorted personally when they arrive, but it can be even potentially faster. And there was a question about further travel. So the government of Canada is also pursuing charters, and the specifics of that are all being worked out, but Newfoundland Labrador does intend to refer individuals connected to jobs and opportunities in this province to that second charter, and we are sort of actively keeping a list of that. So if you have people coming later in May or that you're aware of, just know that that is an option that we can work with you on as well.
Thank you. And I believe, and I apologize if I missed it, but I believe that they're getting some supports in terms of 2 weeks in a hotel. And I don't, did anybody cover that? I don't think that, would you mind commenting on that? Because I think there's a question related to that.
Yeah, so I can. So people who are arriving, some of them are subject to quarantine requirements, so they will be receiving that. And we are offering support to the charter of people who are arriving. The Government of Canada has also announced that they're going to be having 2 weeks of support in hotel, but the specifics of what that looks like, Newfoundland, like you made a comment about, you're catching up. Government of Canada is working through what that looks like as well. So for those of you just getting started in the process, that very well could be a support that may be there from Canada. I can't make a commitment on behalf of what they're doing, but they have talked about immediate income support upon arrival. There may be some terms and conditions around who's eligible depending on their current financial status. And they have spoken as well about 2 weeks accommodations upon arrival in the country as well. But those are initiatives that are forthcoming from Canada.
Excellent. Do we have any more questions that I missed? And I apologize if there's a whole bunch of great discussion going on. The turnaround, okay, we have a question here. What is the turnaround for Pathways job matching to contact employers? We registered on April 21st. I'm not sure.
So Kim, I think you might be talking about the job matching. That's Pathways job matching is a separate initiative from Ukraine, but the answer is sort of similar in both. So for Pathways job matching, we do data polls on a weekly basis. So if there are matches, you would hear about them typically midweek. I think Wednesdays is when the team sends out those resumes. But it's only when there is a match. So if there is no match, you wouldn't receive anything. So if there's something that you're acutely interested in, sort of really we're hoping for something and maybe you're flexible on what you're looking for, I'd say just email us at Ukrainian Family, or if you've already been working with an IP, with an immigration officer, just let them know, like, I'd really like to try to fill this position, because there are some people who are flexible. They may not necessarily be looking for the exact kind of job they left in Ukraine. They may be open to other sectors or other opportunities. So we may have people who could fit that. That's not a direct match on the resume. So if we just know, like, this is something you're really interested in, we can take that away as well.
We do have a question. Oh, sorry, go ahead. We do have a question saying, what do you mean by register for the province, with the province?
So I dropped in the chat there the link, Imad. So we've launched a service portal where people can register. It's at gov.nl.ca/Ukraine or /Ukraine. And in that, what that does is that gives us some basic information about the family or the individual arriving to help us then determine what services they need. So whether they need assistance with finding housing, language support, job search, enrolling children in school, registering for MCP. That's just, they tick all of those things, and that then helps us to be responsive back to the individual to make sure they have what they need, either from the province or from the Association for New Canadians. And so the link, I just dropped the link in the chat box. But if you actually go to gov.nl.ca, right at the very top, there's a box there, right where there was in the past information about COVID. Now it's about Ukraine. If you click on that, the service registration is right at the top.
Excellent. Excellent. All right.
Imad, if I can add something, so many people, it is like confused about the round table. And so basically, if you sign up for the survey, you there can sign up for be part of the employer table. What we want to do, and one of our intentions here, is start to create an employer community. You know, some of you already have experience that can share with others that are starting to navigate this process. And that is the idea of this roundtable. So it is future conversations. So that means if you have any question. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Constanza. Any more questions that we missed? Does the employer have to register? Yeah, I think that we've addressed that. So I don't think there's any open questions. And of course, feel free to reach out to TaskforceNL with any questions or follow-up items. We do have some important questions that we're asking in the survey to help us get a lay of the land. I mean, this is a phenomenal turnout, so we can't waste the opportunity to collect data that helps us to figure out how to make this as easy as possible for employers and work with our partners to do that. So I really beg you to please take a couple of minutes to fill it out. And I really wanted to thank you again for attending on such short notice. And obviously, there's a lot of compassion. I always say that compassion is a superpower in Newfoundland and Labrador, and I really believe that. And I think that's a, you know, on just on an economic level, that's a competitive advantage, because when people are looking for places where they can feel at home and they can feel welcome. And I do think that one of the things that we're going to work on together is how do we do that? Because it might sound obvious, but it's not obvious. You know, when from the perspective of an immigrant, they have, you know, there's sometimes a feeling of loneliness and isolation, and some of these factors really determine whether they can make a go of it and feel welcome and feel at home. At the same time, this is one of the friendliest, most open places in the world. So we should be able to bridge that gap together. That's one of the things that we want to work on with you. So that's it. I guess we can end early, unless there's any more questions. I just want to thank all of our speakers for coming and doing such a great job. And I want to thank, obviously, our attendees, and Slava Ukraini, as they'd say, glory to Ukraine. So let's do this together. Thank you.